Just recently, about 5 months ago, my family moved into the house we're in right now after doing renovations on it for 2 to 3 years straight. The house is in a low middle class neighborhood and needed a lot of work. After finally finishing it, we moved in ASAP and got settled. It's very cozy and the neighbors are super nice. However, after about a week or two of being in the house, at about 5 in the morning, I woke up and decided to get a glass of water before getting ready for school. To my surprise, I looked out the kitchen window into the front yard and saw a man walking back and forth under the streetlight. Creepy as hell, yeah, but after only a few seconds of watching him, he looked up and continued down the road. Didn't think much of it at this point. May have been someone walking home or to another location, so I dropped it and didn't tell my parents or friends anything. Fast forward to the end of June, I woke up at about 3 in the morning to my dogs going absolutely ballistic. I scrambled to get them to calm down since I didn't want my dad or mom waking up and getting mad about it. However, I looked out the window and noticed the same damn dude standing there, under the streetlight, staring at or into our house. This unnerved me greatly and I turned the lights on and almost immediately the dude walked away. My dogs finally chilled out and I woke my dad up and told him about it. My dad didn't seem too worried about it and told me to tell him if I saw him again. I agreed and went back to bed. About a week ago, I was unloading a storage unit pod in our backyard. I was home alone and it was rather late. However, I wanted to retrieve my guitar case before I lent my guitar to my friend. My dog started barking like crazy and I immediately went to check what they were barking at. And lo and behold, there that dude was again, in the same spot, staring at or into our house. I had 3 choices: call the cops, call my dad, or be a tough guy. My dumbass chose option C, grabbed the baseball bat from my room and walked outside. The moment I opened the door, he began to walk away. I screamed at him, "Hey, get back here, asshole." And in response, he ran. Once my folks got home, I got a major earful, and rightfully so. My dad and mom called the cops, and the cops did the best they could with what little they had. They simply told us to call again if anything else happened and went on their way. Now, last night, I was getting home with my dad, mom, and sister after a night with some family friends. As we pulled up to our driveway, there he was. However, this time, he was in our yard. The moment the headlights shined on him, he ran down the road. My dad cursed, parked the car, got out with his gun, and stared at the guy as he ran away. My sister, mom, and I went inside immediately to call the cops. We don't know what happened after we went inside, but according to my dad, the man turned around and stared back at him for a while before running off again. I don't know if this guy will be back and how long he's been doing this. I hope nothing spirals out of control, but creepy guy in my neighborhood, that's not me. I grew up in a small town and I could walk and play a couple blocks from home, but only with the company of one of my older brothers, and later our family dog, a super protective Rottweiler mix when I was older. I was never allowed to leave the house by myself because my parents didn't want anything happening to me. There was a well-known neighborhood creep, an old man, probably 60 or so in age, that lived alone in a house on the street adjacent to ours. In the house next to his lived a couple that were good neighbors and great friends of my parents. Let's call them the Smiths. They were about the same age as my parents and loved children, but they couldn't have any of their own. My parents had 7 biological kids and 4 non-biological kids. I was the youngest. There are a few incidents where I remember running into neighborhood creep. One being when I was at the corner gas station with one of my brothers and he came up behind me, smelled my hair, and told my brother I was cute. Another time, I was riding with my dad in his truck, and the guy flagged down my dad and asked him if I was my dad's wife. I was 10 at the time. He was a major creep, but there is one incident that will always stick with me. Me and my siblings would occasionally go over to the Smith's house because they were really nice, loved us, and would let us swim in their pool. They would also pay for us doing small odd jobs. They sometimes would watch me for my parents, as most of my siblings were teenagers with a lot of extracurricular activities. One day, my brother and I went over to the Smith's house. My brother was in charge of watching me that day, and Mr. Smith offered my brother some money to help him move some stuff out to the front of their house for a yard sale and to help them sell things. While the yard sale was going on, I was sitting on their front porch playing with my Barbie doll. A few people had come and gone. My brother and Mr. Smith went inside to go through some more stuff to sell. Miss Smith was busy trying to help someone who was buying something. Then along came neighborhood creep. He looked around a bit, trying to seem interested in buying stuff. Then he came up to me, bent down, touched my hair, and said, "Well, how much for you?" I was incredibly shy as a child. I would cry if strangers even waved at me. This man literally made me piss myself, and I immediately started crying and screamed repeatedly for my brother. Mr. Smith and my brother came running outside, and all I remember was my brother picking me up and carrying me home, while Mr. Smith tried to figure out what happened. So I live in a gated subdivision. It isn't really the kind of place that has many issues, far away from where I grew up. I've never been one to shy away from my past. I did 13 years in federal prison for some crimes that I'm still trying to atone for. I know what's waiting for me on the other side, and I know where I'm heading, but I'm still trying to make things right in the world and leave something positive for both of my daughters. Lately, we have been the subject of some random acts of vandalism and threatening messages. One was a letter in our mailbox that said, "Murderer." I committed no such activity. Nobody was murdered in any of my crimes. Given that we're just getting past the Halloween season, I assumed it was someone just trying to play a scary prank. Yeah, more or less. No harm, no foul. My wife found a letter under her windshield wipers that had a similar message saying, "Don't let him fool you," which included my mugshot from many, many years ago. A mugshot that even I had trouble finding, but managed to do so after some sufficient digging. Our garage was also spray painted. A lawn gnome was decapitated, and a series of plastic forks were left in my front yard. My daughters were scared, and that's absolutely where the line gets drawn with me. I know people like to say, but cameras and call the police. The ones responsible didn't consider that I work for a security company, specifically ones that hire ex-cons to save people from people like me. My house has cameras in places you would never think to look, and within a matter of minutes, I was able to find a shot of the person responsible. If you're wondering why I didn't do this in the first place, I did. He was just better at hiding his face the first few times. But like all criminals, he slipped up and got too confident. I can relate. I knew where to find him. I didn't call the cops, I just went over there myself. I even knew his parents. Yes, he was a teenager. I walked over there and told his parents what he did. They didn't believe me, so I happily showed them the printouts of my security footage that had him clear as day on there. I'll give them credit. They stood up for their son, but also acknowledged when he screwed up and called him over. Honestly, the look on his face when he saw me inside of his house, with all the confirmation anyone needed. He became very nervous and started shaking. I'm not a monster. I assured him that I wasn't there to hurt anyone and that I wanted to have the matter resolved. He had vandalism, trespassing, damage to private property, and mail tampering to answer for. I asked why he did it. Basically, the answer I got was that he and his friends were trying to do some sort of true crime series for what I'm assuming is maybe a YouTube channel or something. His explanation wasn't very extensive. I gave him a choice. The police could be called, or he could pay for the damages he caused. His father asked if he paid for the damages, I would get rid of the footage I have. I told him no. I assured him if the damages were paid for, and he stayed away from my family, I wouldn't call the police. But if he didn't or did it again, I would. They agreed. His father asked me again if I would reconsider, but again I refused. This was his second chance. I'm being very merciful and forgiving those who trespass against us. I don't know why people feel the need to destroy something that someone is trying to build. In my case, it's stability. We have to seriously start accepting that people are trying to change for the better. So, Stan, let's not meet. Unless, of course, you're coming to clean up your mess. I didn't know where to post this. Yesterday, Saturday morning, My kid, 2 years old, has been running out the back door and having us chase her. It's a naughty habit and can be quite scary when she bolts out the door. So she did that again and I ran out after her, saying her name. Wait for mommy. She has just gone down the deck stairs. I'm right there behind her when I hear gunshots and a man running in front of us in the alley behind my house, with a small silver handgun pointed down the alley behind him. He's in a black pleather jacket and a green hoodie, scarcely older than a teenager, but has a determined, confident, unflappable air to him that sends chills down my spine. Can't even describe it. He is so close, there isn't even time to do anything more than grab my child and duck behind the chicken coop. I guess I figured he'd keep running down the alley and we would crouch there till he disappeared. Only he doesn't. He hangs a hard left and jumps my neighbor's fence. The neighbor whose yard borders my chicken enclosure. The guy walks within feet of us, starts to exit by the neighbor's gate, then, at this moment, will stay with me for eternity. He hears my toddler scream crying, the only sound around at that moment. He stops, with his hand on his gun, and turns to look for the source of the crying. I can't hide any more than I'm hiding, and if he turns his head an inch more, he'll see us. Somehow I squeeze and lean just enough out of sight that he just doesn't see us. There was something in his very calm energy that petrified me. A shooter who has just had a gun battle in the middle of the day in a little family neighborhood seems to give no fucks. Naturally, if others are hurt. But I had this horrible cold dread all over me in that moment, that if he turned all the way and saw us, saw me, saw my expression, he would have to shoot me because my face said, "I saw what you did." It was the most terrifying moment of my entire life. I felt perched between utter peril and life, the breathing, screaming life in my arms. Would he turn that little gun on us? Somehow, incredibly, amazingly, as though the pull of investigating the crying, so close to him, was suddenly overwhelmed by his desire to get the fuck out of Dodge. He puts his gun in his pocket and exits through the gate, runs across the street, jumps to the across the street neighbor's fence, and disappears. I ran to get us back inside, and freaking out, I pulled all the curtains and locked the doors, then spent 10 minutes getting put on hold by 911. When the cops arrived, I gave them my eyewitness account, and my neighbor, who had been about to take her trash out and saw it all, gave the same account. They never caught the guy he was shooting at, but they never caught the shooter I saw. It still sends chills down my spine. What if he comes back? What if those bullets had struck my toddler running toward the shooter? A little girl was recently killed in the exact same way at a park we frequent, sprayed with bullets from a gun battle in the middle of day in the middle of a playground. Makes me sick to my stomach, and I'm not even sure I want to live in this city or country anymore. A few years back, my husband and I were living in an apartment in Brooklyn. One night, we decided to check our neighborhood sex offender registry, and we discovered an offender living in our building. Not a super big deal to us, as we didn't have any children at the time, but I should mention that this guy was one creepy looking dude. I'm talking about wild hair, crazy eyes, creeper, scary. We would see the guy walking around the building or neighborhood every now and then. He even set up a fruit stand for a while and would wildly yell at people as they passed by. He never bothered us, so we mostly didn't think about him. At the time, I was working a crazy job where I would be at work really late every night and have to take a taxi home. On those nights, my husband would stay up late and wait for me to get home. I was also a bit brain dead when I would get home after a 20-hour shift, so sometimes it would take me a while to find my keys, and my husband would have to let me in. One night, I had texted that I was leaving the office around 3 a.m. About half an hour later, my husband heard our door handle jingling. Assuming he was me, he got up to let me in. However, something made him look out the peephole first, and there he saw him, the sex offender, completely naked, standing outside our door. As soon as my husband looked out, the guy stopped jiggling the handle, looked up, and put his eyeball right up to the peephole, trying to look in, as if he could tell someone was looking out at him. Then, for some reason, my husband opened the door. As soon as he did this, the guy tried to force himself into the apartment. Eventually, he got the door closed and called me. I was about a mile away from our building when I got the call, and I was terrified. It must have been obvious because when we got to our building, the taxi driver asked if he could walk me to the front door. I told him yes, that I would appreciate that, and he stood with me until my husband came outside to walk me in. We lived on the 6th floor, and from the moment we walked in, you could hear someone running up and down the staircase. We ran to the elevator and jumped in, pressing the door close button over and over until the elevator started to move. When we got to the 3rd floor, the floor where the sex offender was at the time, he began banging on the elevator doors trying to get in. Then we heard him go to the staircase and start running up the stairs to catch us. When we got to our apartment, I called the cops to report the terrifying situation. It took them 2 hours to arrive, and by that time the guy had already picked up his clothes and gone home. The cops didn't even come inside the building. They made us go outside. Didn't even get out of their car. When I explained what happened, they responded by saying, "You live in Brooklyn. Get used to it." Eventually, we moved out of the building, but whenever we go back to that neighborhood, we still see the guy at his fruit stand yelling at people walking by. So with the nagging of my fiance, I've decided to post this story here. It's probably one of the scariest things that's happened to me during my 40 years on this planet. I live with my fiance and my youngest brother, who works in law enforcement. This will be semi-relevant to the story. In a smallish town outside Las Vegas. We don't have much crime for being so close to Vegas, but we do have some. And we have no shortage of tweakers and a growing population of homeless folk. Last summer, I was in between jobs and spent a good deal of time at the public library or my father's business office using the Wi-Fi to browse jobs. It was around 4 in the afternoon when I returned home. We have a dog, and she's a bull terrier cattle dog mix. She's wary of strangers and a literal terrorist, so it makes her the perfect watchdog. Anyway, it's really hot as I live in Satan's butthole and I'm sweating profusely. So I run a tepid bath, turn on Spotify, grab a magazine, and lock myself in the bathroom. The doggo is outside the bathroom door whining because the big idiot hates water, but likes dropping her toys in it. Anyway, I'm mid-bath and I hear my dog losing her shit. Then I hear her run upstairs and I hear someone go, "Oh shit." I freeze. I'm naked as a jaybird. I have no weapons. My brother's lockbox with his Glock is upstairs and my dog is upstairs fighting off an intruder. I grab my phone as I hear the intruder yelling at my dog, who I'm sure is tearing into him. I dial 911 and scream like I'm calling the cops. Cue him cursing and, I'm sure, trying to pry 55 pounds of crazy fucking dog off of him. Somehow he gets away and runs out the back door. My dog tears after him, and as I talk to the dispatcher, I throw on some clothes and then run up the stairs. My dog comes back inside prouder than ever, strutting around. I lock her in my brother's bedroom as the cops have shown up, and I don't need her biting one of them. Apparently, my neighbor heard the barking and called the guy. He's 125 pounds soaking wet, no shirt, and covered in dog bites and meth scars. He found our fake rock and let himself inside. He was taken off, and cops told me not to use a fake rock. Well, no shit. I figured that one out. Doggo was fed a delicious steak, and I spent the next few weeks terrified that some tweakers were going to break back in. We now keep 2 guns locked up, one upstairs and one downstairs. I live in a middle low-class neighborhood in the Caribbean. It's a quiet place where nothing happens. The type of place where people go and retire and sip pina coladas all day. However, a few houses next to mine lived a family that was not like the rest. They had the biggest house on the street and lived in luxury. Their kids would play with me, especially the smallest girl that we all nicknamed Tiny. Tiny was about 5 when I was 11, and she was always at my house. I knew my mom and the neighbors were concerned about a 5-year-old being outside all day and not arriving at her house until midnight on school days, but it was a quiet place where nothing happened, so nobody got worried. When Tiny turned 6, her parents threw a giant birthday party for her, and all the neighborhood kids were invited. I wanted to go. They had bouncy houses, water slides, and everything a kid would want to play with, but my parents didn't allow me to go. I never knew why. I suppose it was because my mom didn't know her mom. I remember feeling very sad because everybody was there and I was playing alone at my house. After the birthday, things went back to normal, and one day we were all playing and talking about what our parents did for work. We asked Tiny and her siblings, but none of them knew what he did, except that he traveled a lot and was always at meetings. I didn't pay much attention, and we all continued on with our day. One night, we were playing on the street when we started hearing loud pops coming from Tiny's house. I'll never forget that day. The neighbors, including my mom, came out, rushing us inside, yelling it was gunshots. Some of us got in my house, and we stayed there as my next door neighbor, a cop, ran towards Tiny's house. All we saw after the gunshots was a black van rushing down the street and almost killing a dog. Some men entered the house. Tiny and her siblings wanted to check what was going on, but everyone forbid them to go. All I remember was a bunch of cops and ambulances a few minutes later, and in a day, I never saw Tiny or her siblings again. For a couple of months, the house sat empty, but black vans and strange men kept coming into the neighborhood, going door to door, asking for any information about the man and his children. No one in the neighborhood spoke about it. I know the cops asked me about Tiny and the kids, and if they ever said something weird about his dad or mom, but I was only 11 and more concerned about playing Mario Kart Wii than about what happened that night. Years passed and the story faded away. Now that I'm a grown-up, I asked my neighbor, the cop, what went down that night. There were rumors the guy died. He said that night the man got a gun emptied in his skull and his wife was gravely wounded. She survived because he was a drug lord that was going to make a deal with the police to turn his rival gangs and some other people over to the cops. The men in the van that were going door to door wanted to know where his kids and wife were to also shut them up. As to the kids, his oldest son was found dead a few hours away in a neighboring town. His car set ablaze. His other children are now living in other countries under witness protection programs. I just hope wherever Tiny is, she's doing okay and her family got the help they needed.